Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. I joined a small team fresh out of grad school in 2018. Despite my qualifications, I was new to the corporate world and naive about office politics and contract law. Our team was working with Megacorp, a huge client and major stakeholder in our company, Tech Solutions. They tasked us with prototyping a complex solution to a technical problem. As the only one with the right expertise, I ended up shouldering most of the work while my colleagues mainly managed the project. Sarah, our team leader and my boss, promised me a bonus worth about 30% of my starting salary. This bonus was supposed to come directly from Megacorp. It sounded great, but I made the rookie mistake of not getting it in writing. Over the next 2 years, that bonus never materialized. I'd occasionally bring it up during meetings, and Sarah would assure me it was coming. "Don't worry, Alex," she'd say. "The paperwork's just taking longer than expected. You'll get your bonus soon." I'd nod and smile, not wanting to rock the boat. In hindsight, I should have been more assertive or at least sent an email to create a paper trail. By 2020, Tech Solutions was expanding its business with Megacorp, largely thanks to my work on the project. Megacorp even presented my work at international conferences, claiming it as their own proprietary solution. While they legally owned the project, the lack of acknowledgement stung. As my contract neared its end in 2021, Tech Solutions was eager to keep me on. They offered a joint employment deal with Megacorp to transition the project fully to the client. I'd spent 6 months in specialized training with Megacorp. I was the only one who could do this job. During contract negotiations, I brought up the bonus one last time. Sarah's response floored me. "Bonus? I don't remember agreeing to any bonus," she said, frowning. "You should have gotten that in writing, Alex." To add insult to injury, I learned that the money earmarked for my bonus was now going to fund an intern to assist me on the project. In the final week of my contract, HR invited me to review the new agreement. Everyone assumed I'd sign. After all, so much time and resources had been invested in me continuing this project. What happened next was impulsive and reckless, and I don't recommend anyone try it, but I was feeling vengeful about the missing bonus, my bruised ego, and my misplaced trust. I realized there was no written agreement on my end either. I'd never formally agreed to continue the project or even stay with the company. I'd just been verbally enthusiastic in meetings. So, on what should have been my first day under the new contract, I simply didn't show up. No notice, no warning. I abandoned them. The day before, I'd left my company devices in my office locker and logged out of all work systems. I sacrificed a few personal items on my desk, but it was worth it. I ignored every attempt at communication for months. It was oddly satisfying, imagining the chaos I'd probably caused. "Alex, where are you? We need you here ASAP," came a frantic voicemail from Sarah on that first day. I deleted it without responding. I had to dip into my savings and relocate to start fresh in another city. It was tough without references, but eventually my skills spoke for themselves. Years later, I reconnected with an ex-colleague, Jamie, on LinkedIn. They filled me in on the aftermath. "Man, things went south fast after you left," Jamie told me. "We lost Megacorp, then a bunch of other big clients. The company's a shell of what it used to be." Apparently, Sarah developed a substance abuse problem, likely triggered by the stress of my disappearance during a critical time. Her marriage fell apart too. I felt a twinge of guilt hearing this, but not enough to reach out or apologize. Sarah tried to contact me a few times over the years, but I maintained radio silence. Now, in 2024, I'm at a new company where I'm also a stakeholder. I'm proposing a new version of that old project I never got to finish. It would be sweet karma to present a patent at an international conference attended by Megacorp. That would be the real bonus. So yeah, mistakes were made all around, with mixed results for everyone involved. But at least I finally got this story in writing. The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd end up in a standoff with an overzealous homeowner association officer at my own summer house, but that's exactly what happened last 4th of July weekend. Let me back up and explain how this whole mess started. My name's Mike, and I'm a 35-year-old software developer living in Seattle. A few years back, I bought a modest summer house on a small lake about 2 hours outside the city. Nothing fancy, just a little 2-bedroom cabin where I could escape on weekends to relax, do some fishing, and enjoy the peace and quiet. The lake community is a mix of year-round residents and vacation homes like mine. When I bought the place, I deliberately chose a property that wasn't part of the local homeowners association. I'd heard horror stories about power-tripping homeowner association boards, and I wanted no part of that nonsense. My realtor assured me that my property was outside homeowner association jurisdiction, so I thought I was in the clear. For the first couple years, everything was great. I'd head out to the lake most weekends in the summer, sometimes bringing friends or coworkers along. We'd grill out, go swimming, maybe have a few beers around the fire pit at night. Nothing crazy, just your typical laid-back lake activities. That all changed when Karen moved in next door. She was one of those year-round retirees, probably in her early 60s, with nothing better to do than obsess over everyone else's business. From day one, she appointed herself the unofficial guardian of lake etiquette. At first, it was just passive-aggressive comments whenever I was outside. "You know, most people don't mow their lawns after 5 p.m. out here," she'd say with a tight smile. Or, "I noticed you left your trash cans out an extra day last week. Just wanted to make sure you knew pickup is every Tuesday." I tried to be polite but firm, explaining that I wasn't part of the homeowner association and didn't have to follow their exact rules. This only seemed to make Karen more determined to bring me in line with her vision of lake life perfection. Things came to a head that 4th of July weekend. I'd invited about a dozen friends out to the lake to celebrate. We were grilling, swimming, playing music, and generally having a great time. Nothing too wild. No illegal fireworks or anything like that. Just a group of 30-somethings enjoying a holiday weekend. Around 9 p.m., I was manning the grill when I saw Karen marching up my driveway, cell phone in hand. A heavy-set guy in his 50s was trailing behind her, wearing a polo shirt with Lake Vista Homeowner Association embroidered on it. "Mike, I need to speak with you immediately," Karen called out in her shrill voice. I sighed and set down my tongs. "What can I do for you, Karen?" She gestured dramatically at my gathered friends. "This party is completely out of control. You are in violation of at least 5 different homeowner association bylaws. Officer Johnson here is going to need to shut this down immediately." I blinked in confusion. "Officer Johnson, Karen, I've told you before, I'm not part of the homeowner association. You have no authority here." The guy in the polo shirt stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "Sir, I'm going to need you to ask your guests to leave the premises. You are in clear violation of noise ordinances and occupancy limits." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Look, I don't know who you are, but you're trespassing on my property right now. I'm not in your homeowner association, and you have zero authority over me or my guests. Please leave immediately." Karen's face turned an alarming shade of red. "How dare you! We are trying to maintain order in this community. If you won't comply voluntarily, we'll be forced to call the real police." At this point, my friends had noticed the commotion and gathered around to see what was going on. My buddy Dave, who happens to be a lawyer, stepped up next to me. "Is there a problem here?" he asked calmly. I quickly filled Dave in on the situation. He turned to Karen and Officer Johnson with a bemused expression. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Dave said. "You are attempting to enforce homeowner association rules on a property that is not part of your association, and you're threatening to involve law enforcement over a perfectly legal gathering. Are you aware of the potential legal consequences of your actions?" Karen sputtered indignantly, but Johnson suddenly looked a lot less sure of himself. Dave continued, "I would strongly advise you both to leave this property immediately. If you continue to harass my client or attempt to interfere with this gathering, we will pursue legal action for trespassing, harassment, and impersonating a law enforcement officer." Johnson's face paled. "Now hold on. I never claimed to be actual law enforcement. I'm just a volunteer homeowner association compliance officer." "A compliance officer with no jurisdiction here," I pointed out. "Now please leave my property before I'm forced to call the sheriff's department to remove you." Karen looked like she wanted to argue further, but Johnson grabbed her arm. "Karen, I think we should go," he muttered. They turned and walked quickly back down the driveway. I thought that would be the end of it, but Karen wasn't one to give up easily. About 30 minutes later, 2 sheriff's deputies pulled up. I met them in the driveway, feeling a mix of anger and anxiety. "Evening, officers," I said. "What seems to be the problem?" The older deputy, a guy probably in his late 40s, looked around with a slightly exasperated expression. "We received a noise complaint about a wild party at this address. Mind if we take a look around?" I gestured for them to follow me. "Not at all. As you can see, it's just a small cookout with some friends. We've got the music at a reasonable volume, and it's not even 10 p.m. yet." The younger deputy nodded. "Looks pretty tame to me, Bill. Certainly not the drunken rager we were told about." I filled them in on the confrontation with Karen and the homeowner association guy earlier. The older deputy, Bill, sighed and shook his head. "Let me guess. Blonde lady, lives in the blue house next door. We've had run-ins with her before. She likes to exaggerate things." "That's putting it mildly," I said with a humorless chuckle. Bill turned to his partner. "Why don't you go have a chat with Mrs. Henderson? Remind her about the consequences of filing false reports. I'll wrap things up here." After the younger deputy left, Bill turned back to me with an apologetic look. "Sorry about the intrusion, sir. You're well within your rights to have a gathering like this. Enjoy the rest of your evening." I thanked him, and the deputies left without further incident. My friends and I were able to enjoy the rest of the night in peace. The The next morning, I was cleaning up the yard when Karen came storming over looking furious. "I hope you're happy," she shouted. "Thanks to your little stunt last night, I've been fined by the sheriff's department for misuse of emergency services. This is all your fault." I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. "Karen, you brought this on yourself. I've told you repeatedly that I'm not part of your homeowner association. You had no right to try and shut down my gathering or send that wannabe cop to my property. I don't want any trouble with you, but you need to understand that your homeowner association rules do not apply to me." She glared at me for a moment, then turned on her heel and marched back to her house without another word. I'd love to say that was the end of our problems with Karen, but unfortunately, it was just the beginning. Over the next few months, she escalated her campaign against me and my uncontrolled property. First, she started calling the sheriff's department for every little thing. If I had music playing outside, if I had more than 2 cars in my driveway, even once when I was pressure washing my deck on a Sunday afternoon. Each time, the deputies would show up, find nothing wrong, and leave with increasingly irritated expressions. Then, she tried going over my head. I got a call from the county zoning board claiming someone had reported unauthorized commercial activity at my address. Apparently, Karen had convinced herself that I was running some kind of illegal vacation rental. It took several frustrating phone calls and emails to sort that out. But the last straw came when I arrived at my lake house one weekend to find a chain-link fence erected right on the property line between our yards. It was ugly as sin and clearly meant to provoke me. I'd had enough. It was time to fight fire with fire. I called up my buddy Dave and asked if he'd be willing to help me out pro bono. He was more than happy to oblige. Turned out he'd been itching to put his legal skills to use against a classic homeowner association Karen for years. Dave helped me put together a comprehensive cease and desist letter, detailing every instance of harassment, trespassing, and false reporting Karen had engaged in over the past few months. We sent copies to Karen, the homeowner association board, and the sheriff's department. But we didn't stop there. Dave helped me file for a restraining order against Karen using the documented pattern of harassment as evidence. We also filed a civil suit for infliction of emotional distress and interfering with the quiet enjoyment of my property. The day Karen was served with the lawsuit papers was one I'll never forget. I wasn't there to see it in person, but my other neighbor, a retiree named Bob who'd become a good friend and ally against Karen's tyranny, gave me a full report. Apparently, Karen's face went through about 5 different shades of red as she read through the documents. She started sputtering about how she was just trying to preserve the community standards, and how I was the one causing all the problems. The process server, who'd clearly dealt with people like Karen before, just calmly informed her of the court date and walked away while she was still mid-rant. Over the next few weeks, it was like a switch had flipped. Karen became suspiciously quiet. No more complaints, no more thinly veiled threats, not even a dirty look when I was out in the yard. When our court date arrived, I showed up with Dave, ready for a fight. To my surprise, Karen came in with a lawyer of her own, and a much more subdued attitude. Long story short, we ended up settling out of court. Karen agreed to remove the fence, pay a modest sum for my legal fees and damages, and most importantly, signed an agreement stating she would not contact me or enter my property for any reason outside of a genuine emergency. As we left the courthouse, Dave clapped me on the shoulder with a grin. "Well, Mike, I'd say that's a pretty satisfying win. How does it feel?" I thought for a moment, then smiled. "Honestly, it feels like I can finally enjoy my lake house in peace. And that's exactly what I've done ever since." Karen still lives next door, but these days she scurries inside whenever she sees me. The homeowner association keeps to itself. The sheriff's department hasn't been out in months, and I'm free to have friends over, play music, and generally enjoy my property however I see fit. Sometimes when I'm sitting out on my deck on a quiet evening watching the sunset over the lake, I think about the whole crazy situation. It was stressful and frustrating at the time, but now it's just a story I tell. The time I took on a power-mad homeowner association Karen and won. The next one is a petty revenge story. I, 26M, and my fiancé, 28F, are staying at my Emiles, 57F house for a couple of weeks. Little to say that after a couple of days of being her best, she started to make our stay here a living hell. She is always complaining, always angry, and criticizing anything we do. We wanted to make her a nice meal the other day. Our hobby is cooking. She already ate that food made by us once she was in visit to us and she loved it. We made the exact same food and she started complaining that it tastes weird and that she better orders food to herself. Anyways, because she came up with the idea that she's too busy to cook, we should cook the next meal, but only the way she asks us to. I started cooking and she gave very strict orders, micromanaging everything. She clearly has time for that. The funny thing was that she said, "This is the way a real name of the food is made." But believe me, the stuff she put in it, I never heard anyone cook it like this. At one point, she gave me a jar of pig lard and told me that I should put it in the dish to add more fatty taste. When I opened the jar, a very rancid smell hit me. I realized that the lard has gone bad, but decided to go with it, and I put 2 in the meal. Orders are orders. After the food was ready, I quickly told my fiancé, who knew about this and thought that this is a very good revenge, and we went out to eat our lunch in a restaurant. When we came back, my mill was furious and said that her meal is inedible. What did I put into it? I said absolutely only what she asked me to. She was there to witness. I took a spoonful and it was absolutely disgusting. Then I used a reverse Uno card and started complaining about the dish she told me to make, that it tastes weird and that I know how to cook better meals. Her face said it all. I hope she won't complain about our cooking anymore. The next one is a malicious compliance story. This post made me remember my time at a company about 15 years ago. Per diem food was $15 for breakfast, $25 for lunch, $50 for dinner. We were told to buy the food with your company card and submit photos of the receipts using your phone. One day I spent $35 on dinner, and the photo of the receipt was a little fuzzy. By the time I noticed it, when I went through the photos and assigned them to meals, I had lost the paper copy. So I got reprimanded by our VP. All photos must be clear and easy to read. He also confirmed that meals under $25 didn't need receipts. Alrighty. Before I got that email, I had thought over our per diem policy and its potential loopholes. That was the day I decided to begin exploiting it. Challenge accepted and malicious compliance begins. I have very simple tastes. Give me a flip-top can of chili and a plastic spoon and I'm fine. Plus, that way I can just go back to the hotel and rest. I don't have to spend the time at a restaurant or hit a drive-thru on the way back, so about $10 a day is plenty, but the company was offering $140 and receipts were only required for transactions over $25. Edit. My math was off here. The company actually offered $90. So the first day of travel, I'd go to Walmart or Costco and get my food for the week. I'd do 3 separate transactions, one for $15, one for $25, and another for $25. That took care of my food for the week. I always went as cheap as possible, since any extra money I spent on food was money I couldn't spend on something else. Then I'd spend the rest of my travel days buying whatever I wanted, never spending more than $25 per transaction. Costco and Walmart were ideal. They offered cheap food, food I liked, and also all sorts of other things. I knew I couldn't be greedy. If every day I came right up to the max of each meal per diem, but not over, and never submitted receipts, that would seem strange. So I'd ensure to bucket them into only 1 or 2 transactions per day. I did this for years. As long as each receipt added up to less than $25 and I only had 1 or 2 allocated to lunch and dinner, no one cared. For a while. Then there was an outage for an airline where I had to stay an extra week on site. I had no clean clothes, so I bought some clothing at Walmart, more or less as I had done before. I had a new boss and new VP by then. My new boss noticed and freaked out. He and I spent hours on the phone together trying to slot each receipt into some acceptable category. It was hopeless, though. It was impossible to disguise those Walmart purchases by mixing them in with all my other Walmart purchases. No matter how much canned chili you eat, it's still canned chili. So I sent in my expense report, in all its Walmart glory. My boss made it sound like someone would roll up to my desk with a siren on their head. But nothing came of it. I laid low for a few months after that and ate some really nice expensive meals. Then my boss got transferred. I got a new boss who had no knowledge of this history. I went back to my old ways. Over time, I bought kitchen towels, bath towels, water bottles, sippy cups for my kids, stuffed animals for my kids, books, tools, glasses, pants, shirts, jackets, a toaster, walkie-talkies for my kids, headphones, etc. And I probably saved the company a couple $100s each trip. I always came for just under a week. So it was a win-win. Thank you for large-ass old company. And you're welcome for my thriftiness. The money I saved you went right to the bottom line. The next one is an entitled people's story. Just want to start off, this happened ages ago, back in my childhood days, so I cannot quote it verbatim, but give the basic gist of how things played out. My parents divorced when my sister and I were toddlers, and because of that, they had worked out how our summers would go. Basically, my sister and I would spend every other summer with our dad. Supposedly. It usually ended up with him putting us on a plane and shipping us to spend our summer with our paternal grandparents. During his summers, we'd spend around a week in the beginning in Toronto, 4 weeks in Sudbury, and then the last week again in Toronto. While in Sudbury, we would visit extended family at a family reunion. One particular summer, the host decided to do a raffle, and they went above and beyond by acquiring what could be won. Seriously, new camping gear, small household appliances, think blenders or handheld vacuums, makeup kits, expensive popular toys at that time, etc. All I can remember was that a single raffle ticket cost $1, because as a child at the time, that was what they had told me. I think I had purchased around $5 worth of tickets for fun. The first prize I won was a Splash Time Doodle Bear. I repeat, popular toys at the time. The second prize I won was this camping cooler set, which was an expensive set that I won for $1. It consisted of a large cooler on wheels, a smaller cooler that usually required 2 people to carry when filled, a smaller cooler with an over-shoulder strap, a soft personal-sized carrier cooler, a standard and large-sized thermos, and I think a hard personal-sized lunchbox. Again, an expensive set. Of course, I was excited that I won this entire set for $1, more so for the fact that it was so much from one ticket rather than the possibility of how expensive it was. So, with help from the hosts, we packed the set away and continued on with the reunion, and I became distracted with my new toy. The end of our stay is approaching. I remember the cooler set I won, and sharing with my sister how excited I am to share my prize with my mom and our new stepdad, wondering if they'll be just as excited. That's when my aunt approaches. "Aunt, don't forget your promise." Me, "What promise?" "Aunt, that you would give part of the set to Nanny." Me, "Which part? I never said that." Aunt, "Yes you did, sweetie, the lunchbox and thermos." Me, "No, I didn't. When did I say that?" Aunt, "When we were packing the coolers away." My sister and I argued that this conversation did not happen because it didn't. But my aunt gaslit me, a child at the time, into giving away a part of my winnings to my grandmother. Now I know kids are taught about sharing and whatnot, but that also includes that you don't have to share if you don't want to, and to accept when someone doesn't want to share with you. Not gaslighting children into thinking they actually forgot a promise to share, when no such promise was ever made. When I shared this story with my mom when we got back home, with the 2 smaller coolers and large thermos also suspiciously missing from the set, she was not surprised in the least. But those 2 coolers we did get see a lot of use during camping trips, so not a complete loss, I guess. It wouldn't be for years later, well into my 20s, did she share more stories about my aunt and grandmother? Did I learn how entitled they actually were? Perhaps stories for another time. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.